Okay, one of the tools that the Watchtower uses, one of their main tactics is to always claim religious persecution. But the funny thing about that is they're the ones claiming religious persecution, but they're actually doing it to you. Okay, so here's how it works. I filed a brief where I was telling the court we're going to need these bank records because we have made an accusation of money laundering. And the judge said, yeah, okay, I agree. So the judge said, okay, I'm going to grant the motion. You know, we need the bank records to clarify what's really going on here with these accounts. So the next thing that the Watchtower did was then claim that I'm persecuting them because I don't agree with their beliefs. I don't agree with their way of life, and I'm attacking the Watchtower. Okay, the bank accounts have nothing to do with religious beliefs. It has nothing to do with your way of life or what you believe or any of your teachings. Nothing. It's a bank account. Okay? It has no religious significance whatsoever. But this is what they claim because the most important thing for the Watchtower is they always try to appear to be the victim. You know, they're attacking us because we're Christians, because, you know, they don't agree with our beliefs and our way of life. The most important tactic that the Watchtower has is they always try to seem like the wounded victim. Okay? But in the background, they're actually attacking you in all kinds of ways. They're going to come at you. And if you're tough enough to handle, you know, what they're going to throw at you, then they're going to find out who you care about or who you're close to. They're going to find something that you care about personally, and they're going to lean on it. Okay? The Watchtower's main tactic for anything is leverage. They're going to find a way or find something that they can use as leverage to stop you. But publicly, they're going to claim to be the poor, wounded victim. And this man is attacking us because he doesn't agree with our beliefs. And we're just good Christians, and, you know, all we care about is our neighbors and doing the right thing. And he just has something against us. And this is what they always will try to do. If that doesn't work, then the next thing that they're going to do is claim, well, this guy's an apostate, which is what they did with me. And and I said, you know, how can I be an apostate if I'm not one of Jehovah's Witnesses? I'm not baptized in your faith, and I mean, how? But what it showed me is that the Watchtower will say anything if it suits their needs at that moment. Okay? And you know, like I said, I'm not trying to give the Watchtower a black eye, and it may not be the whole organization. It could just be a rogue element within the Watchtower. I don't know. You know, I gotta follow the evidence, and the evidence basically says that it's more than just a rogue element, but that's something, you know, we can meander through another time. But this is the thing, you know, you're going to be labeled as an apostate or as an enemy of Jehovah, or you're an enemy of Christians, or whatever, and it's all designed to make them appear to be poor innocent victims, while in the background they're attacking you, or they're trying to find something you care about to lean on it, to put pressure on you to make you stop. But the outer facade is, oh, you know, we're just good Christians, and we don't know why this man is claiming that we're laundering money. Hey, I just followed the money trail, And what I saw was money laundering to avoid paying taxes, full taxes, and to acquire property that the Watchtower didn't own with money that wasn't technically under their control. Yeah. And it's like, you know, that was the first question their lawyer had asked Anthony Smith. How did you all... He didn't come right out and say, how did you figure this out? But what he more or less implied was they thought someone from within the Watchtower had leaked this information to us. It wasn't that at all. It was just some bank statements and some other irregularities that led to this, which is why we needed to get the bank records. And for an organization that claims to be about the truth, they sure fought tooth and nail to keep us from getting the bank records. You know, and to this day, we still haven't gotten them. You know, and, you know, and that's what I'm saying. It's not like I'm out to try to get the Watchtower. All I did was just follow the evidence and follow the money. So I've said before that the Watchtower behind closed doors, and sometimes not behind closed doors, they'll pretty much say anything to achieve whatever their goal is. Okay, this is, see how thick that is? This is the transcript for one particular day in court where we were supposed to have a corporate review because Ernest Brede had forged the property deed for the Menlo Park congregation. We'll get into that later, but the interesting thing about this is right here on the 4th page of this this 1.5 inch thick transcript. This is the Watchtower's lead counsel, Calvin Rouse is his name. And in his opening arguments, he says, I am general counsel for the National Organization of Jehovah's Witnesses out of Brooklyn, New York. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be here, but this is one of our 13,000 congregations in the United States. We are a hierarchical religion structured just like the Catholic Church. Here it is in the record. Okay? Now, here I am being accused of being an apostate, and I'm not even baptized or one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But here you have Calvin Rouse, lead counsel for the Watchtower. In his opening arguments, he says, we are a hierarchical religion structured just like the Catholic Church. If that's not apostate language. Okay, and the point that I'm making is, I'm not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but even I know from my research for the legal case, this is an organization that's not hierarchical. So why would you claim that? You know? And why, if you are saying you're the true religion, to me, if I'm the true religion, I am not going to compare myself to a religious group that I consider false. I mean, if you're the true religion, why would you compare yourself to the Catholic religion? Because that's what he said, his exact words. It says right here, you know, we are structured just like the Catholic Church. So the point that I'm making is, these are guys who are willing to say anything if they think nobody's ever going to know or ever going to find out. And all we've ever tried to do was make stuff like this available so that you can come to your own decisions. You can come to your own conclusions. You can come to your own understanding. Like I said, I'm not trying to give the Watchtower a black eye. I'm not an apostate. None of us, through this whole situation, none of us are. You know, these guys stuck to their principles. They stuck to their beliefs. You know, I respected them. There was times I was putting together documents and I said, I gotta add this. And they're like, no, that will be interpreted as possibly blasphemous. So no, don't do that. You know, these guys have real strict control over what I put together, you know. But you sit in a courtroom and here's a Watchtower lawyer in his opening statement comparing himself to the Catholic Church and saying he's it's a hierarchical organization. I mean, you know, and I'm sitting here laughing, but it's sad. It's really sad, you know. And all we ever wanted was for the public in general to know this is what's going on in court. These are the kind of things that they're saying. And you don't have to believe me. Get the documents yourself. Get the transcript yourself. You know, read it for yourself. We have never jumped up and down and said, believe us, we're telling the truth. We've never done that. All we've tried to do is present documents so that you can look at the evidence and come to your own conclusion, your own choices, your own understanding. That's all we've ever done. We asked questions in the very beginning, and the Watchtower basically told us, you just shut up and you know, don't ask, you know, because there are things going on that are beyond your understanding. And we're like, okay, but we're not talking about spiritual stuff. We're talking about money and accounts and avoiding paying taxes. You know, using a very complicated and complex scheme that actually involves all the 13,000 kingdom halls that Mr. Rouse has described. And that's all we wanted. Someone to just look into it. You know, we weren't trying to bring down the Watchtower. We were just trying to say, hey, you know, we discovered some irregularities and what looks like clear-cut criminal activity. And all we wanted was just somebody to do their job and look into it. When we discovered that the clerks were tampering with documents, that was kind of a turning point in the whole case. And that basically we made that discovery September 1st at that hearing. And what happened was basically on September 1st we were in court, and the judge was kind of scolding us about not filing a document properly, and she was really laying into us pretty hard, and we just kind of quietly took it because we were confused. We were like, what are you talking about? And we were confused because we were actually holding the document. And we produced the document. We said, Your Honor, here's the document that you're talking about. And the judge said, I don't know anything about this. And she said, how do you have this document? And I don't. And we told her, well, hey, we filed this a month before, blah, 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 blah. What we found out later, or after the fact, was that all the documents that we had filed had basically been thrown into a box and not filed properly. It was almost like someone was purposely trying to prevent our documents from being filed. And the only way that could happen is if the clerks were doing it. So the judge calls for a 15-minute recess. And she basically decides to go and look for this document. She calls for a 15-minute recess, but she's gone for almost an hour. And when she comes back to the courtroom, she is not happy. She is, I think she was very angry, and I think she, in retrospect, she was a bit embarrassed that here these guys were who weren't even lawyers, but we had our stuff together, and she's the judge and didn't know anything about this stuff. And we had, at that point, been making claims that the clerks were tampering with documents, but this was something that was considered unthinkable. The clerks would never do this. And we were crazy if we think the clerks were doing this, but the evidence was right there. So, during the course of the hearing, the next thing that came up, the next point that we had to cover was the fact that Anthony Smith, the attorney for the Watchtower, was refusing to cooperate with the subpoenas that we had filed. There was certain evidence that we wanted, and the Watchtower was just, no, we're not going to cooperate. And, you know, it's funny because one of their teachings is that you should always be in subjection to the superior authorities, which basically means if the police or the government wants something from you, then you comply, you cooperate, you give it to them, because that's what a Christian does. A good Christian, follows all the rules and follows the laws and whatnot. But that doesn't seem to apply to the Watchtower itself, because when they received the subpoenas, they just refused to cooperate. And we told the judge about this, and she basically jumped on Mr. Smith, and she said, why aren't you cooperating, and this and that. And Mr. Smith's attitude pretty much was, well, they're not lawyers, so I shouldn't have to, give them what they asked for. He had a real nasty attitude, and he was very arrogant. And, that kind of was the whole pervasive attitude to the whole case, that because you're not a lawyer, you should be denied justice. And that's pretty much how they treated us and how they acted. If you don't have a lawyer, you don't have a right to even come to court. The law doesn't take into account the fact that you just might be poor. You might not be able to afford a lawyer. And let's face it, lawyer fees are high. The average person walking down the street can't afford a lawyer. So what do? And this is why we took the case into court ourselves. We had no choice. So the judge basically told Mr. Smith to cooperate, and and we told the judge we don't think he's going to cooperate anyway, no matter what you say. And the judge said, well, then we'll have to explore a court order. And then we moved on to the next point of discussion and whatnot. So several weeks later, I actually put together a court order, a motion to compel, to force the Watchtower to provide the documents that we needed to make our case. And the motion to compel came back denied. And I was scratching my head. I was thinking, what? Because in the September 1st hearing, the judge herself said, we may have to create a motion to compel. But her exact words were, well, we'll worry about that bridge when we cross it, but that may have to be an option. So this was her idea, creating a motion to compel. So I put the motion together and filed it, and I figured it's a no-brainer. It'll come back, granted, and the Watchtower will be forced to provide us the information that we wanted. So imagine my surprise when I got the motion back and it was denied. And I'm thinking, why would the judge deny a motion that she herself suggested? It just didn't make any sense. And after we did a little bit of digging and fact-finding, we discovered that the judge knew nothing about these motions. That basically the clerks had forged the judge's decision to deny the motion. The judge didn't know anything about it, and it's incredible. It was like, what, did the Watchtower buy off the clerks too? I mean, we just couldn't believe it. Okay. The next thing that came up was several weeks later we were scheduled for a hearing where the judge was going to determine if the case would continue and go forward. And I think the first date was December 26th, which I thought was strange because the courthouse was closed Christmas week. The courthouse wasn't even physically open. So I thought to myself, why would the judge schedule a hearing when the courthouse is closed? That was the first thing. That just, didn't feel right. So then Brenda Tolbert, the clerk, judge's personal clerk, called and said, your hearing's been rescheduled to, she called 2 or 3 times to reschedule, but I think she said it was January 3rd, I think. And she said, yeah, the judge is going to hear your arguments, your oral arguments then, and that's your date. And we said, okay, no problem. And it was about 2 weeks, maybe a week prior to the date, and we get a phone call from Brenda Tolbert, and she says, okay, the judge has canceled that court date, and your new date's going to be January 5th. And we were like, okay, fine, January 5th, no problem. And then we got a call a couple days before, I think it was actually the day before, and Brenda Tolbert says, the judge has changed her mind, and there's not going to be a hearing, and she's going to decide the case and send you a written notification of what her decision is. And that was kind of peculiar because Judge James was always the kind of judge who wanted to hear arguments. She wanted to hear, what you were going to say, what this person was going to say. She made a very informed decision. She didn't just jump up and decide, okay, this is what we're going to do. She always made an informed decision based upon arguments, evidence, emotions and whatnot. So that in itself seemed peculiar. So I made a few phone calls and started doing a little digging. And what I discovered was, and this was just a complete shock, the judge never set these dates for the hearing, any of these hearings. Every single time Brenda Tolbert called to tell us, oh, your hearing has been set up for this date or that date, it was all false. Because basically Judge James was out of town for Christmas vacation. She left town before Christmas and didn't arrive back in town until I think it was January 5th, the day that Brenda Tolbert called to tell us that there wasn't going to be a hearing. The judge was out of town. So there's absolutely no way that the judge could have set these court dates or made these decisions. And once we realized that and we confronted the court with it, all of a sudden the case was dismissed and we were being told that's it, it's over. And we were like, hey, there's something wrong here, because the judge just didn't know anything about it. And it became very obvious from that point, all they were interested in doing was keeping any case that we brought to court out of court, because we had the evidence to prove that the judge couldn't have dismissed this case or couldn't have scheduled these court dates or couldn't have denied any of the motions that were filed, because she wasn't even in town during that period of time. And from that point, it had just been a matter of the court was trying to find a way to cover this up, to prevent the public from knowing that clerks tamper with cases all the time, especially if they're cases with people who actually don't have a lawyer.